Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this live broadcast. We're now on number one here. We will be broadcasting now. This is our first week at this time slot, 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the United States and everywhere else in between. Thank you for joining us, and a big thank you to our listeners in the TNT chat communities. Can take time to migrate our audience to this new time slot, but we'll do that pretty quickly based on past experience. So great to see you guys in there as well. Now, again, to continue from the opening segment, we're going to be talking about the situation in the Middle East. I can't tell you what has happened even over the last 72 hours has been pretty unbelievable and horrific right now in Gaza. There's so much ground to cover. There's so many different factors that are coming into play right now with South Lebanon and Israel, but still the world is taking its eyes, even for a short time, the focus off of Gaza, and this is where the real horrors are taking place right now. I want to bring on to the program to discuss the completely dire situation, what we can do to possibly resolve some of these problems that we see in Gaza. Ghadi Francis is an independent journalist. She has been on the ground in the region as well and covering this very closely for the last 9 months and beyond. Ghadi, thank you for joining us on TNT this week.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Patrick.
That's our pleasure as well. And Ghadi, I know that, I want to talk to you about a number of things, including, your experience on the ground there, also what it was like to walk long distances to Gaza as well, something that major task that you've undertaken to raise awareness about this issue. But, I was talking to our audience before the break, Ghadi, about this report from the Lancet. This is a peer-reviewed medical journal in Britain, putting the estimation in terms of the death toll in Gaza way, way, way above the 37,000 official number that's often put through on mainstream media sources. It's much higher than that, and it will end up being much higher than that with the situation as it stands. Your thoughts on the current state of affairs right now in Gaza, Ghadi?
Well, this report, like Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta has named it, it's apocalyptic. The number is beyond imagination. But sadly, sir, we have become just numbers to the world. The sad part of the situation is that whether they read that 200,000 humans were killed or 20,000 or maybe 2 million, just because they're Palestinians, they don't matter. We have seen how biased the world is. Some humans deserve life more than others. Some babies deserve life more than others. Some mothers, some men. In Gaza, it has not only been a massacre in terms of killing people. There's an ecocide. There's an they have destroyed everything: the land, the ability to grow crops again, the hospitals, the schools. Everything has been, and still we have not seen any actual serious motion globally to stop them. Even the American vetoes are always there to actually give them more time and more impunity to carry on this genocide. So in this situation, because these people are our people, they are my people, they look exactly like me. Lebanon and Gaza and Jordan and Iraq and Syria, these are all blended and united in the shape and in the feeling with Palestine. So when I look at these people being killed, it's actually me being killed. So right now, I don't have anything to say but outrage. What do you want us to do so that we can prove that we deserve life? What else could we do? We have shown multiple, I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about all kinds of media that has been showing. Even the Israeli media has reported about the Hannibal Act on Sunday, showing how the October 7 film was made and perturbated all around the world. And it actually wasn't real. We still know that there were no 40 beheaded babies. There was no mass rape. But still the sentiment around the world that Hamas is a terrorist organization that did this and that. Well, let's say it actually did. Does this justify an actual genocide? If they actually killed 1,200 Israelis, which has been proven wrong, does this justify killing, as per Lancet is saying, 186,000 humans? So what else could we say? You know, it's like we're speechless. The only positive side about all of this massacre is that the Palestinians haven't lost their resilience or their resistance, and actually, the world, the mobilization of all these sentiments and all this activism has never been like that. It is unprecedented, and maybe this is like the light in the end of the tunnel, that all of these people who are dying and sacrificing, in the end, this will not be without any justice, because at least the whole world now knows what is this Israeli occupation of historical Palestine. Who are these people, and what kind of dictatorship and occupation and colonization they are? They used to call themselves the leading democracy of the Middle East. Now everything is just right out there. Everybody can see them for what they really are.
Yeah, a lot of questions are being raised now. A lot of realizations are now being openly discussed that were off limits not so long ago. As you know, the conversation has gotten a lot wider now, but that hasn't stopped the suffering on the ground in the short term. And I'm sure you've seen some very disturbing reports. One of the most disturbing things that I'm looking at here on my news feed is that instructions were given by some Palestinians in Gaza to move to the eastern sector, where they said they would be safe in Gaza, and they were bombed as they gathered in those areas. So people are being manipulated or directed around by the Israelis, by the Israeli occupation forces, and then hit in refugee camps. We have one clip from the Nusayrat refugee camp just in the last couple of days. I'm sure you're familiar with this footage here, Ghadi, but we're going to show it for our audience to have a look at. Let's go ahead and roll this clip. I want to get your comment on this. Go ahead and roll this.
كويس انت؟ مش عارف. بشش. سيارة هنا شباب. يا ناس في مصر. لا خلاص
Ghadi, I mean, we've seen footage like this before, but the point is, with all the horrific scenes that we've seen over the last 8 months, it hasn't stopped. It continues. It persists. Just tell us your thoughts about what you're seeing here.
I've been trying recently to manage my mental health in terms of our coverage. And 9 months into this genocide, we have lost it, Patrick. Many times I just filter out how much I really want to see. I cannot really fathom it anymore. I cannot be sane watching these people. And I always insist on saying, we are not pieces of flesh. In Palestine, in Gaza in particular, there is 0% illiteracy. These people are educated people. These people are generous people. These people are brilliant people. You have, I mean, not you, I mean, the world, the media has made us content of flesh and blood and massacre, not knowing what actual Palestinian life is like, what their resilience is like, what their knowledge and education is like. When I went to Gaza in year 2013, Patrick, my surprise was that in this besieged strip, the number of schools and universities is so proportionally big. There is all kinds of specialties and PhDs and people working on themselves. So it really aches me, not only that we are being killed and massacred in that sense, and we have become refugees in our own land for more than 7 decades. Not only that, what really kills me is that they still market us as like a subhuman, where it's normalized to see our flesh or our babies' faces off or heads off, and nobody is angry. But it took them 1 second on October 7th to be angry. All the world, all the Western media, all the mainstream media, the French, the German, the European, the British, the American, everybody was so angry at the news. They didn't even see that an Israeli baby was harmed, knowing that this Israeli baby has probably another passport and is not from this land, is not indigenous to this land, but everybody was angry. What really, now, I after 8 months, I don't want the world to see us as flesh. I want them to see that they are racist, they are biased. We are just equal humans. So when I see these kinds of videos, I know these people. They probably all are educated. They all can do better in life. They all are productive. They all are hardworking. They have been stranded. They have been left stranded, and they fought. Most of the people in Gaza are not originally from Gaza. They are from all around historical Palestine. They fled through the Nakba and the Intifada and then afterwards. So these people, regardless of the ongoing massacre to them and their parents and their grandparents, they insist on teaching life. Just like one Palestinian poet, Rafif Ziyadi, and I would invite everyone to listen to this poem right now, because she says, we teach life, sir. So regardless of all the massacres and the horrible feed that is coming from Gaza daily, the continuous massacre, I want everyone who listens to me not to see us as flesh that is spilled on the land. No, we are people who are teaching the world life every day. I want them to look at the vloggers, at the small, the young kids and teens and the young men and women of Gaza that are filling the social media platforms with all sorts of feeds of rebuilding, of cleaning their homes, of cleaning the rubble, of making food from nothing, of singing at the beach. When you see this Gazan spirit, you know that definitely justice will prevail. We definitely will stay here in our land. They might kill 200,000, they might kill 2 million, but they will not be able to kill us all.
And you mentioned before October 7th and the narrative that was woven in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. Now, a lot of independent journalists have debunked a lot of the claims made by especially Israeli officials about 40 beheaded babies, about mass rape, electronic intifada, the gray zone, MON-FRI, number of independent journalists, and the Israeli media itself, Haaretz, Times of Israel, Ynet, they admitted that there was something called the Hannibal Directive. Now, all of these Western independent media outlets who reported on this were, castigated, attacked, called conspiracy theorists for months. And then in the last couple of days, we have an official admission from the Israeli press that the Israeli military killed a large number of their own people when they panicked and they started firing and shooting at everything that moved on October 7th. We have a video clip here. I want to play this October 7th clip, and then I want to get your response and reaction as to why this is so important, Ghadi. But let's go ahead and roll this from Double Down News on X. Go ahead.
Now, they scramble Apache helicopters, but there's no ground control. It's pretty clear that in the chaos, some hostages at least were hit by Apache helicopter fire. We've identified 27 people who were clearly taken hostage, taken captive, and were taken away from their homes, but never made it to the fence, died somewhere between their homes and the fence. There's a fair chance that a number of them were killed by Apache helicopters. Within the kibbutzes, we've identified 18 people who were pretty much certainly killed by the police and the army as they arrived. 12 of them, a specific incident in kibbutz Be'eri, where you have a large number of gunmen, around 40 gunmen, holed up in a house with 13 hostages. A tank is brought in and opens fire on the house. There are 2 survivors from this incident, which is why we know about it. There may be other incidents we don't know about because everyone was killed, but there are 2 survivors from this who spoke to Israeli media. There's a common sense thing. You just have to look at the scale of the destruction, and it's clear that 1,200 men armed with rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns did not do all of this. The Hannibal Directive, which was something that was developed in the 1980s by the Israelis, and it was basically to avoid situations where their enemies would capture 1 or 2 or 3 Israeli soldiers and then effectively hold them to ransom. There was one occasion where the Israelis released over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in return for a single Israeli soldier. So an order was issued whereby they said, it's better that we kill everyone than allow people to be captured. Now, this was supposedly rescinded several years ago, but at midday on October the 7th, the army revived the Hannibal Directive, put it into effect.
70 vehicles were hit. At least in some of the cases, everyone in the vehicle was killed.
The Israeli military does not deny the report.
So, Ghadi, I mean, it's pretty clear. You have parking lots full of incinerated cars from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. That was the call. That was the clarion call used by the Israelis for revenge, to attack, no holds barred military operation to, exterminate Hamas, and whatever got in their way was justified based on these reports, which now we find out were lies. The official stories on this. I mean, this is pretty incredible. This has such huge implications, doesn't it? And I wonder if there's going to be a reckoning on this. Your thoughts on October 7th, Ghadi?
Well, the thing is that we are used to kind of fake media, and we are used to this woven narrative. But what was new is that the American president bought it and said it out loud. Both stories, and Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, also bought that fake story, but they never corrected it, just press releases to correct it. So on the day of October 7, people who actually know what Hamas stands for, I'm not talking if I like them or not. I'm saying if you know what this actual ideology of this group is, you would understand they do not do rape. The rape is anti their ideology. They are Islamists. They do not do these things. In their ideology, it doesn't work. And also, when you talk about the actual footage that shows that it's not grenades that did this. So the fact, the knowledge, the reality, the truth, the analysis has always been there. It's just, it took all that time to come out because now it's normalized. Now nobody really looks at the numbers, and there are still some people with all audacity who come on TVs or go in the streets and say that anybody who is saying ceasefire now is a terrorist sympathizer. So they don't care about the truth. Here it's the sentiments, it's the racism speaking, it's the supremacy speaking, it's the woven narrative and the brainwash speaking. So the more the truth comes out, it is good. It is respite for people like us. At least now they know the right story and somebody is saying it. But in terms of the massive sentiment around the world, I think people do not really care about the truth. It's really very hard for them to change their stance. After 9 months, if you have not said one word, ceasefire now, and you have not said stop killing children till now, I don't think the truth is going to change your mind. It is racism speaking there, sir. So I don't think the people would change their stances, whether it's the far right racism that is speaking, whether it's in Europe or in the American politics. I don't think they're going to change, but maybe it's going to be a little bit harder for them to sell themselves as humanitarian or human-loving cultures and entities. So the truth serves on the long term. It serves in the end when the history will narrate this story. But right now, they do not care. I think what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing and what the Israeli occupation is doing has become far bigger and worse and harsher than what Nazis did in terms of numbers and time and scale. But people are still angry at what happened there. And they're not finding it in themselves. For example, in Germany, I'm talking about the official entities, not the people, because the people are waking up. So they're still not finding it in themselves to say, at least we're not going to do another massacre on our watch. So it's just where we started this conversation, sir. We are brown humans. We are subhumans. We don't deserve life as much for them, you know?
Yeah, there was clearly a major effort from the beginning to immediately to characterize and categorize Hamas as the equivalent to ISIS. This is definitely what I got from all of the U.S. media coverage, all the Western media coverage. And of course, Israel, Netanyahu's government, they were kind of, egging on this sort of rhetoric in the West. And this is all the major media outlets were pushing this. So by doing this, and Piers Morgan is a big British talk show host, and he'll say immediately at the beginning of every segment, he'll challenge, he'll push his guest into a corner, and he'll say, "Do you condemn Hamas?" First and foremost, it's almost like establishing the framework that you're dealing with ISIS. Therefore, in fighting ISIS, all things are justified. That you can suspend all sorts of, CARE, international law, Geneva Conventions, etc. Anything goes in the war on terror. That's how it was framed from October 7th.
The thing is,
this is a very powerful concept. Go ahead, Ghadi.
The thing is, just like I need to say this idea. Do they really hate ISIS? Didn't they monetize and invest on ISIS presence in Syria because they were anti-Assad? Also in Iraq, who helped ISIS fight al-Hashd al-Shabi? I don't think they have a problem with ISIS when it comes to their own good. In Syria, ISIS has been selling them oil. So if they hated ISIS as much as they hated Hamas, things would have been different in eastern Syria, sir. This is another lie.
And the other thing, it's what you said about understanding what Hamas is, and you're being objective. You're saying whether you like them or not is beside the point. Historically, they would be regarded historically as an armed liberation struggle against apartheid. And the only reason they're designated as a terrorist group in the United States or Britain and Germany and a few other European countries is probably the result of heavy lobbying from the Israeli lobby. I mean, let's be realistic about the political situation, but not every country around the world will regard Hamas or Hezbollah or the Hashd al-Shabi as a terrorist organization. They're according to the United Nations, according to international law, you have the international law gives you the right to resist an occupation by any means necessary. Isn't that what Hamas is? But to have this conversation, it goes over the threshold of, the terrorist conversation. This is the problem, I think, with the whole discussion. And this is why it's so warped in one direction. I will argue, Ghadi, that this is why we're seeing the atrocities on the scale that we're still seeing them, because somehow the Israeli operations protected under this cloak of framing this as an anti-terror operation, and not for what it is, which is a wholesale industrial slaughter against innocent people who are occupied under international law. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I totally agree with your thoughts. And in general, whether it's Hamas or other organizations, I mean, you have to have a moral standing to be able to evaluate organizations and humans. Who are the people really evaluating? Are these the people who massacred 1 million Iraqis and Afghanis? Are these the people who also aided massacres in Yemen and killing innocent people in Yemen while fighting? Are they really credible enough to say what's humanitarian and what's terror? I mean, the whole compass is botched right now in the world. Nothing really stands for what it's named. But in general, I think it's time for us to stop seeking their approval. I don't think that Hamas or Hezbollah or al-Hashd al-Shabi are similar and are the same. And maybe Hamas has an Islamic ideology in a way, and Hezbollah has a different Islamic ideology in another way. But in general, let's speak about Let's speak about the facts, and we will be factual. This is the only way to be objective. We have seen how the Israeli hostages that were freed. We have seen the mental state, or at least their ability to smile seconds after their release. So some of them said that they were birthday cakes. One of the girls was freed with her puppy. There's an old lady who almost hugged and kissed the Hamas fighters. This is human-to-human interaction. And these images will never be erased in the history. ISIS is not that. ISIS kills without thought. ISIS, there's no hostage situation for a terrorist group like ISIS. But this is not, I think any discussion outside the actual ongoing slaughter is just a waste of attention right now. Because as we speak, the Palestinians, the innocent Palestinians, the doctors, the nurses, the paramedics, any educated person who has been abducted for no reason. Now, the most recent report is that they have been injected with unknown substances. The Israelis are torturing. They are letting dogs rape humans. And they are releasing the footage and nobody's talking about it. They even, you could see the footage of the Israeli hostages after freedom, and you could see the footage of any Palestinian boy, girl, man, child, woman. After their release, everybody is so traumatized. Some of them have missing organs, for God's sake. One of the Palestinians in the recent release had no spleen. They took his spleen from his body. So there is no humanitarian, there is no war rule convention that they haven't breached up so far. And so now we are speaking like, what would Hamas do? Or do we really like that Hamas is like that? I don't care about Hamas or Hezbollah or Hashd al-Sha'bi. There's a baby being slaughtered. Stop it. No, it's becoming like absurd. They're still talking about condemning Hamas or whatsoever. Condemn the bomb that is burning a tent. This is a human here, regardless of what you think they are. But the audacity of the Israelis, they even go to the UN, they stand at the podium in the United Nations, and they say that the people in the UN staff members, they say the UN is Hamas, and the media is Hamas, and the doctors are Hamas, because this has become the justification for them to slaughter us all. But I want to ask them, how about the church that they bombed in Gaza? Was it also ISIS? How about the Christian lady that they left to bleed to die? Her name is Ilham. On the second week, maybe, or the second month, I'm not sure at all, because now we've lost the count. They left Christians die just equally like they left. So it's not about Hamas right now. But every time we're talking now, it has been like a lot of time when we are always sharing these images, always sharing this feed, trying to like find a sense of humanity around the world to tell someone to stop killing us. But I think after 75 plus years of this struggle, sir, we don't really care anymore. What we really care about and what we really believe in is the ability for our people to keep fighting. Is that after 8 months of genocide, the people are still resisting and they're still being able to smile. I don't know how. And as for us in Lebanon, we are so proud. For the first time in the history of this war, and I say this war started 1948, for the first time since the occupation came and stole land and started killing people. For 75 years plus, they've been scaring us. They've been turning us into refugees. They've been breaching all kinds of law. And today, we have the ability to build drones that could fly over their military zones and their military centers and bases. And I'm speaking about the drones that the Lebanese resistance released. These bring a lot of respite to the mothers of the martyrs, to the people in the tents, because after 75 years of being weak and receiving, at least now we can tell them, no, we can do the same, but we're better. Hezbollah did not kill civilians up till date. And they show us in video who they are targeting, what military bases they have been targeting. While the Israelis have killed 3 journalists in Lebanon, they sniped them like birds. They were just out there. It wasn't really like by mistake. They shot Issam Abdullah from Reuters because he is a journalist. They shot Farah Omar and Rabi' with a drone, with a missile as well, just because they were in front of a camera. This is what the Israelis do to the Lebanese people. They actually burned 1 grandmother and 3 granddaughters in a civilian car in southern Lebanon. And southern Lebanese people send them a drone footage that we can, but we're better than that. So I think this is what I want to think about, Patrick, because this is the only way for us to keep breathing, to keep drinking water while our parents, our people, our families cannot. I still cannot. I look at Hind Khudari, I look at Bisan, I look at these women journalists. I see it's me. They have had the similar education, they have a similar lifestyle, and they are stranded and stuck every day looking for water to drink, just a shelter to sleep, and most of them are just moving from one place to the other. So the only way I could survive the guilt is by always talking about the strength, the resistance, the resilience, and the moral superiority that our people have. We never do this. Even if they occupied our land and killed our children, we are not savages, and it is very different. We will always stay here and fight because this is the only home we have. It is our homeland. It is not a promised land and I didn't get, I don't have family in Manhattan or Poland or wherever. We have been born here. Our ancestors have been born here. We have no place to go but to fight until the last breath. So I think in the end, they are afraid. They will flee. They are not secure and they are not confident because they know that our homes are our homes and they are stealing them. So when you know that you are an invader and you know that you are not loved and you know that you are a bluff, you can never win. And even if they kill us and even if they do all these things, we will always stay here and fight. And regardless of the big number and the heartbreaking realities that we are seeing, I try to always remind myself of over 25 million martyrs. It took them. Millions of people died fighting the Nazis in Russia and Europe. Millions of Algerians died fighting the French occupation. And I'm speaking to you right now, and it is the saddest sentence to say, but more death will happen. They will keep on killing us because they are savages and criminals and war criminals. But even if they kill millions of us, in the end, it's a matter of time, and it is very close and it is very near. And today, the awareness globally is way better than it was. So I think this is a very big price, but I will always look at the strength of my people, and I will always refuse to see them as flesh.
Ghadi, I want to talk to you about a couple of things before we break. First thing, before I forget to ask, you in the past took on a personal challenge to walk on foot the length of the Levant to Gaza. Just tell us when this was, and tell us a little bit about your experience, just briefly. And I want to get to the UNRWA conversation, but go ahead.
I was invited in year 2013, in January 2013, to the Arab League in Cairo to speak about the Syrian war, being a war correspondent and on the ground in Syria. And at the time, I was really into cross-border stuff because between Lebanon and Syria. So I was really in the ground, if you know what I mean, as a journalist. You just get caught up in the adrenaline rush, and I didn't really calculate. I don't know if I would do the same today in my 30s. I was in my 20s. So I was in Egypt, and a lot of the fellow journalists and colleagues inside Gaza were like, you're in Egypt, try to come here. It's easy. And I was like, how can I enter? Because in 2013, Rafah was closed. The siege was there. Just so that we tell our viewer and all your viewers, sir, for more than 15 years, there's nothing allowed to enter or exit Gaza. Gaza is the world's most populated and densely populated open-air prison. This is what the United Nations called it, not me, and Amnesty International. This is what humanitarian international committees called Gaza. So it was closed. And I was like, how can I enter Gaza without getting into trouble with the Egyptians? Because the Egyptians have always been conspiring with the Israelis against the Gazan people. So they said there are the tunnels in Rafah where you can enter for solidarity. And for me as a Lebanese, we would never let an Israeli stamp our passport because it is illegal and it is immoral. So as a Lebanese, I would never go to any part of Palestine because we do not recognize something called Israel. This is the Lebanese law, you know. So in Gaza, I would go there through the tunnel, and nobody would touch my passport. So I actually agreed, and my colleagues were there on the other side of the tunnel waiting for me. They got me a clearance because they used to work in a radio, and journalists and humanitarian solidarity was allowed to enter. So I entered in January 2013 via a Rafah tunnel from the Egyptian side to the Gazan side, and I exited also via a tunnel. I stayed for 6 days. I went to Beit Lahia, Jabalia, Old Town Gaza, to the church, to Rafah, to Rimal, and then I released 2 documentaries about all the things that were unpredictable and like I never expected to see them. What I will never forget about Gaza is that people, it's the human nature and the Palestinian nature. The more you oppress people, the more you deny them their basic rights, the harder they fight for them, the harder they work on their skills and their knowledge. So I was really, I thought as a Lebanese journalist, I had more access to technology, to knowledge, to TV work, to editing programs, to all the softwares, you know. And my surprise was that they are like way more skilled than I was and way more humble. And they all just, everybody was looking how to get out of the prison. But I don't want to leave my family. This is the struggle of the Gazan youth. Everybody wanted to prove themselves outside. But it was a truce. But even in the times of truce, the Israelis controlled the calorie intake per capita. The Israelis controlled who can enter, who can go, where you can go, and you could never probably leave unless you enter through that tunnel. And this is when they say the tunnels are Hamas tunnels. There are tunnels at Rafah because people needed medicine and Egypt was closing its borders. It's the human nature to survive. And I want to ask everybody who thinks like that, like if it was you or your family and you had a kid, for example, that had a cold and you needed to get him cough syrup, wouldn't you open up a tunnel in the ground to get there and get the medicine? They have silently and with all impunity and immunity besieged Gaza for over 15 years. And the only time these people were trying to pay back, to revenge, the whole world stops and talks about it. I'm not trying to say that killing civilians is a good thing or that I approve of it. But who started it? You know? So this was my Gaza trip. I saw and I reported about many things. And just FYI, Patrick, Hamas wasn't very happy that I reached Gaza. Hamas, I mean formally. Because I am a secular person and I spoke in politics anti their ideology because I did not like their stance on Syria, for example. And I do not believe in religious politics. I believe in secular systems and politics. So this is, and I never saw anyone who's pro Hamas in the community because anybody is against the authority in a way. But I didn't see anyone who's against Hamas in times of war as well, because they would become the defender. So this puzzle, like, oh, everybody is Hamas. No, these are people, and this is an authority. When there's no war, the authority is just an oppressor. But when there is war, this authority is the reason why they haven't died yet. So they are all behind Hamas in times of war. And in general, I do not believe that oppression changes people's minds. If we tell them Hamas is a terrorist group, they're going to love it a little bit more. But if we tell them you have the right to fight because your land was taken, but let's rethink if all people should be Islam or Christians or in this region, maybe you can actually talk to them in politics. Maybe you can actually talk about ideas. But in times of war, we are speaking with people who are actually going on TVs, I mean the Israelis here, and saying, kill them all. They are actually standing and protesting the delivery of aid to babies. They are actually justifying leaving babies in incubators to die. So at that point, I don't really want to discuss with them. It's like you get really fed up and you say, okay, if you are identifying terrorism, you are the biggest terrorist in the world. I don't want you to find me cool because you are not cool, you know?
Yeah, it's a very, very tenuous conversation, to say the least, at this point. We're at a wit's end, but we got to keep talking about, we've got to keep reporting. Ghadi Francis, independent journalist, war correspondent from Beirut, Lebanon. Really appreciate you coming on TNT this week.
Thank you.
Here she goes, ladies.